we were there to share the backcountry and not gatekeep it. And by doing so, it unlocked just like this incredible outpouring of kind of joy and love. And like, that's what I miss.
Welcome to the storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. You know that I'm all about lift, serve, ski areas on the Storm Skiing Podcast. But today we are going to explore a fascinating experiment in creating a managed Colorado ski area with no lifts. I really thought Bluebird Backcountry was going to work long term. And frankly, I was surprised to hear that the ski area was shutting down in 2023. But 2 years later, one of the co-founders is ready to talk about Bluebird, what it took to get this unique operation live, why it ultimately shut down, and whether the story of Bluebird is truly over. I can't wait to get into that. Real quick, a reminder, you can now watch the Storm Skiing Podcast on stormskiing.com or on YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. It is a really cool experience. We drop in photos and videos of the resorts and the people I'm featuring. So please check that out. And please give me a follow on X or on Instagram at Storm Ski Journal, same handle as YouTube. You can also rep the Storm by picking up some Storm merch at the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com. Stuff like this awesome hoodie I'm rocking. And the very best way to support the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism is to upgrade to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast, which will get you access to 100% of the Storm's written content, past and present. And a shout out to one of the Storm's biggest supporters, Profile Search International. I know you come to this podcast to hear from the best minds in skiing. They are all, of course, employed. But there is always a ton of ski industry talent out there that is looking to make a move, and they could change your whole operation. The folks at Profile Search International are the ski industry talent acquisition experts. They are the only executive search and recruitment firm in the entire world that is 100% focused on the ski industry. Profile Search has used their intimate understanding of skiing and related industries and of available candidates worldwide to place hundreds of transformational leaders at the best and most progressive ski areas over the past 30 years. With offices in the United States and Canada, Profile Search can find and negotiate with the right leaders for your team. You can reach out to them directly, find them at profilesearch.com and hit them up by email or phone, or just send me a note and I will connect you directly with this expert team. All right, time for episode 208 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Erik Lambert, co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry, Colorado. My guest today co-founded Bluebird Backcountry, Colorado. Set on a ranch near Steamboat, Bluebird Backcountry was an inbounds backcountry hybrid, an attempt to combine a patrolled and avalanche-managed ski area with the challenge and satisfaction of earning your turns. With 1,200 managed acres of skiable terrain on a 1,245-foot vertical drop, Bluebird was poised to become a new kind of ski area in an ever more crowded Colorado. But the ski area shuttered in 2023 after just 3 full seasons. Erik Lambert is my guest. Erik, welcome to the Storm. Really glad to have you. I think this is a story that I certainly have been wondering about for a long time, and I think the broader ski community is. So I can't wait to get into it with you. How you doing today, Erik?
I'm great. It's like 7 in the morning. I got my coffee. This is awesome. Thank you for having me and letting me reminisce a bit. It's an honor.
So we're here in early April. Ski season is far from over in Colorado, and I will in fact be out there myself in May to enjoy some of that high altitude skiing. But a lot of people have gotten the bulk of their skiing in so far. How's your season been, Erik?
Season's been pretty good. We've had our storms and spurts. Been able to do some hut trips. Did 7 days in BC last month. It was great. I even rode some chairlifts this year, man.
Did you?
I know you're coming out here in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to skiing with you.
Yeah, I'll hit Loveland. Is that where you have a pass?
Yeah, I'm past it, Loveland.
Is that the only place you lift ski, or do you sample as you go around?
Um, I mean, right now it's nice. It's 45 minutes up the road when I-70 is smooth, and I can get up there and do uphill lap before work or just do a late shift. It's easy and I don't like the traffic in the hubbub, so it's a good place to go for that.
Part of the reason I'm coming out in May. So you look cozy there. I don't think that's where you live. I think that's your office. What are you doing with yourself these days?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, my goal with Bluebird and here at Bonfire Collective is help extraordinary brands reimagine what the future can be for the outdoor industry, for the ski world. Uh, Basically, I run a marketing agency. I started it 1 year before Bluebird. We got a team of 17 people who are making stories come alive and brands come alive in the outdoors and for conservation and the environment, that sort of thing. It's pretty great.
And longtime listeners know that Bonfire is a sponsor of the Storm and that we have worked together on the Storm's digital branding. This interview has nothing to do with that, and it was no way contingent upon that relationship. This is all about Bluebird and that business and that venture. Before we get there, though, Erik, I'm curious about your ski story, where you grew up, how you started skiing, and how did you get this interest in backcountry?
Yeah, thanks, Dad. My dad would take me out as a tiny tyke and push me around the yard. And, when I was pretty young, he would take me out of kindergarten or whatever. And, uh, you know, every month we'd, take a Friday off or something. I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and then outside DC. So when I was really small, I'd hit all the kind of small ski areas in New England. I've got like pins in my collection from all those ski areas. I got to find those. I don't know where they went. Um, and then yeah, skied a lot at Jiminy Peak, honestly, as a little kid. And then when I was a little older, 7, 8 years old, moved to outside DC. So I skied like Seven Springs and Snowshoe and Ski Liberty and that sort of thing.
So that's a lot of lift surf skiing, and a lot of folks are familiar with those, and that's what I generally cover. The backcountry scene's a whole different world, and in the DC area, Whitegrass is a great gateway for that. In West Virginia, they have no snowmaking, but get a ton of snow, and you're able to actually, it's on an old ski hill, so you're able to ski 1,200 vertical feet if you want to skin up. That's not how they market themselves, but practically that's what it is. Did you find Whitegrass? Was it trip out west? How did you transition from being a regular lift skier to someone who was earning their turns in the backcountry?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, so I had a good friend growing up in my summer camps and whatnot, and we ended up going to the same college. And so he got me into it my freshman year. Basically, he's like, "Hey man, like we should go ski Mount Washington, right? Let's go ski Tucks or Gulf of Slides or like go do something big and cool."
Right. So this is in New
Uh,
Hampshire for folks who don't know where Mount Washington is.
that's right. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that sounds amazing. I have no idea what you're talking about, but if you think it's cool, I probably think it's cool. And he's like, all right, so here's what you need. Like you need to buy all this gear. Here, go buy it in Spain because it's going to be way cheaper. And like, I had these huge packages being shipped to my college. Um, didn't know how to use any of the equipment. He showed me how to use it. We went up there. We literally the first time we tried, there was hurricane force winds, not even kidding, like lifting us up off our tent because we went up and slept the night before. We turned around after getting no sleep. And then the next time we went out, we're skinning up and I'm literally skinning over some recent slide paths that had gone with these old growth trees that are all down. And I'm just like clambering over these trees, not paying any mind to the fact that there was two avalanches that had happened here recently and that could be me buried under all that debris. Um, so the reason I tell this story is that first of all, you need a friend, you need a bunch of money, you need a bunch of privilege, you need the ability to like go do, be okay with very difficult things. And then you need the knowledge, which I didn't have. And that's why I started Bluebird, right? So that I wanted to make sure that other people did have a Bluebird when they began because I was not in a place I should have been. I did not have the knowledge I should have had. And it shouldn't be that difficult to get into this.
So let me stop right there at that fork in the road because what you just described is why I don't go into the backcountry. And that you could have had that experience and just said, this isn't for me. I'm just going to go to Attitash where they have lifts and no avalanche danger. So what was it about that not fun sounding experience that appealed to you or called to you in a way that not only made you want to do it again, but to shape your life in a full ski center around it?
I mean, two answers to that. One, I'm a masochist. And and two, I did move after school. I moved to Jackson Hole. And when I was in Jackson, I knew that I wanted to do a lot more of this and get trained and like do it properly. And so that's really when my backcountry world accelerated is when I was at Jackson.
And was that Jackson has a lot of gates and you can take the lifts up and you can ski out. You can also go to a lot of stuff around there. Was it some combination of those experiences? I remember driving over Teton Pass a couple of years ago. It it looked like a ski area. There were so many cars parked and so many tracks down the hills. I mean, it hadn't snowed in a while, but it I was amazed at how deep the backcountry scene was there. So what was it like there and how did that drag you in?
I mean, number one, it's the predominant culture there.
Yeah.
So it's just what people do. But this is also 20 years ago. So there weren't as many tracks or as many cars. You could actually park on the paths and it wasn't an issue. But honestly, part of what happened here was that I w- I was just coming out of college. I had this job at Alpinist magazine in Jackson. I was not making very much money, man. Um, and in fact, I was making so little money that I didn't buy a ski pass to Jackson Hole my first year there. I bought a pass to Snow King and I had been given some leather telly boots. And I was like, I'm just gonna learn to telly at Snow King and I'm gonna take this avalanche class and like figure out this backcountry thing. So some of it was just driven by that.
So you're living the life in Jackson. Probably could have made a living as a guide there, for example. That's more than enough terrain in that area for people to set up their lives, and a lot of people do. So you moved on eventually and founded Bluebird sometime later. So take us into that. You said that I'm not sure when you actually got the idea for Bluebird, if it was that day at Tux or at Mount Washington, or if this germinated later as you're skiing around Jackson Hole. Take us into when you actually got the idea for Bluebird and how that fits into your evolution of your life as you eventually move away from Jackson.
Yeah, that day was at Gulf Slides, by the way. Yeah, so actually my co-founder, Jeff Woodward, was the one who originally had the idea for Bluebird. He brought his brother out in Crested Butte and was just like, the kid had such an amazing day. And basically asked Jeff, like, why doesn't everybody do this?
This was in
And
Jackson.
this was in Crested Butte.
Okay.
And yeah, Jeff's brother asked him, like, why doesn't everyone just can they just buy these skis and then like do this and then go in bounds? Like what's the deal? This is great. And uh as a result, Jeff realized like, man, why doesn't anyone know about this? Why doesn't why are the barriers to entry so high, etc. And within the first 10 days of coming up with that idea, he brought me in because I was working on marketing in the outdoor industry. He was more kind of an ops brain, finance brain type person and wanted to have a partner to build this thing with. So I had just started my other company
Yeah.
and I had a little bit of time on the side. I'm like, yeah, I'll help you get it started, I guess. And that was the genesis. We literally were working on it 1 to 3 hours a week the first year, just trying to understand, has anyone else done this? Are we entering into like a truly new space here or not? What can we learn about the market? How can we understand what the volume of backcountry skiers or backcountry curious folks would be? Literally, we're counting cars in backcountry parking lots,
Yeah.
like trying to do the math that way.
So this was 2017-ish.
That was, yeah, that was 2017 that we were just getting started.
Okay, so you start this around 2017, you're looking around, you're doing your research. I'd imagine you looked at other models and considered a lot of different models. Let's talk about how you found the location because I think that's the biggest thing here that I would have assumed was not that hard because you look at the United States map and once you get off the highway system, I mean, there's a lot of land out there and you look at the mountains and you're like, oh, you could start 100 ski areas in 100 places. It's not that simple. Tell us about finding the mountain, the search for that, what the barriers were, and how you finally got to the place in Colorado where you started Bluebird.
We built a planning squad of volunteers. We basically took a bunch of people out to dinner,
Hmm.
um, who had reached out through a survey we had distributed and who had said, like, this is really cool. How can I help you? And basically, I think that first dinner had about 20 folks. And a lot of those folks that were at that very first dinner were contributing 10, 20, 30 hours a week of volunteer time for years. Like just an unbelievable outpouring of help. Um, and through that planning squad, we were like, all right, well, we need to prototype this. Right. And so how do we do that? We we probably can't make the perfect model because it would be incredibly expensive. But like, how do we figure out how to get people on snow, give them a really welcoming, inclusive experience, an educational experience, a social experience? And so the very first step was just figuring out how could we do that. And the result was that we partnered with a guide service and yeah, shout out to Colorado Mountain School because they helped us a bunch and got a Forest Service permit for like an outfitter guide permit.
Hmm.
And that process, even just that process to do 4 days of testing required a 100-page Forest Service permit.
Okay.
So we did that at Mosquito Pass, which is about an hour and a half from where I'm at in Golden. And then people loved it. It sold out. While we were at Mosquito Pass, two of the guests who came were like secret shoppers from Winter Park. And they basically had a blast and then approached us afterward and said, can we do an experiment like this at Winter Park? And they helped us after kind of the main resort closed while Mary Jane was still open on weekends.
Hmm.
They basically let us rent a huge chunk of the resort for $1 and used ski patrol and like their staff to help us execute another weekend test inbounds, if you will, but without the chairlifts running. And we did a very similar program, but we were doing it all ourselves. We actually got a fleet of skis to rent and we did our own education on site. So coming out of that experience, we're like, okay, we know people like this. We have to keep going. And
What was it that they liked? What about those 2 weekends told you this can work?
people like you who are hesitant to do this have always been curious. Like, there's just a lot of people who are curious about, like, how does this work? What do I do? And the whole idea of our brand was that that's okay. You don't need to know anything. You can show up and have never been on skis before. And we had a number of people who had never skied at all, let alone gone backcountry skiing, right? And you can come to this place and we will facilitate your experience. So that's what people are enjoying is like feeling like they belonged somewhere and that they could try a new experience and that they could get the endorphins of going for a hike in the woods in a beautiful way without the noise and machinery and all kind of the like busyness and trappings of the modern ski world. So once we came out of these prototypes,
Hmm.
we realized we needed to figure out where we could do this more permanently. How do we have our own spot? And really, there's kind of four options for that. There's state land, county land, that sort of thing. In Colorado, there's really only one, maybe two state parks that could work for this. And so we very quickly were like, all right, that's not really much of an option. There's uh, getting a Forest Service permit. We went down that rabbit hole and realized it was going to take many years and lots of money that we didn't have to do that. And we were building momentum. We wanted to get started. The third option was private land, figure out how to buy or lease a mountain. We started looking into that and we're like, oh boy, there's not really many mountains that are private.
Hmm.
And none of them are really close to here except uh, for a mine, a molybdenum mine.
Hmm.
They're not going to let us on there. And then the fourth option, we were like, this is it. We'll partner with an existing ski area that already has a permit and we'll cooperate with them. And look at this. There's, for those who don't know, most ski areas have a permit to operate in an area, and then their inbounds operational zone is a smaller footprint. And
Hmm.
so there is this space outside of their operating area, but inside their permit, where theoretically, like you need permission to expand into there, but we could provide a compelling case to do so, and we could operate basically in their side country. And we're like, this is it. And Winter Park's interested, and blah, blah, blah. We ended up talking to a number of ski areas, including Winter Park. And we did get to talk to like the C suite at these ski areas. But in the end, we had never run a ski area.
Right.
So they eventually were like, well, if we were going to do this, we just do this ourselves. Why would we hire two guys who could put our permit at risk or who don't know how to operate this? So that's when we really pivoted and said, all right, we got to figure out the private land piece. And it actually came out of the planning squad that we had built. Somebody's like, my uncle manages a ranch that has mountains on it. And you guys should probably come up and check it out.
I interrupt this conversation to bring you a quick note from my partner, Aspenware. Imagine a future where 99% of your mountain products are booked online. Aspenware is the leading e-commerce solution purpose-built for the ski industry. They create customized e-commerce platforms that ensure resort guests spend more time doing what they love and less time standing in lines. Utilizing the team's extensive industry experience, Aspenware strives to make the resort booking process seamless with a mobile-friendly, simplified sales process that anticipates the needs of customers at every part of their journey. Based in Denver, Colorado, Aspenware stands apart as an innovator. They understand the value that software and technology bring to a mountain resort, and they strive to create solutions so good they seem invisible. Visit aspenware.com to learn more. All right, back to Erik. When I talked to Jeff a couple years ago, when you were getting ready to shut down, when you were announcing the shutdown, he said that you'd considered areas all over the West. So it didn't sound like Colorado was inevitable. I mean, how many different places did you check out? And did you know right away that this one, when you saw it, was the one that was going to work?
Man, those are two really different questions. um, First thing I'll say is we wanted to based it in Colorado because our lives were in Colorado at first. But something that most people don't know is that after a test season in 2020, we're like, okay, this, we ran the operation for about 30 days and a lot of those days sold out and like people are really liking this and we're creating something new and different. We immediately realized that we should try to build a network of backcountry ski areas. Both of us, like we met in college through climbing. And so both of us had seen the climbing gym business consolidate over the last 3, 4 decades. And basically, the climbing gyms that were winning were the ones that saw the opportunity and figured out how to distribute themselves or acquire a whole network of gyms. And so, like, very early on, we are like, hey, we've got an idea that is going somewhere. And if we're going to do it, let's do it properly. And to do it properly is to own the market out of the gate. So our vision was really to have 6, 8, 10, 12, maybe more over time, Bluebirds
Mm-hmm.
distributed across the country. But it wasn't until we ran that test season that kind of the year after Winter Park and Mosquito Paths that we really like leaned into that vision and started looking not just in Colorado, but all across the Mountain West.
So you do that big search and you get this recommendation for Bluebird. You go check it out. Why is this the spot?
So so we went up and looked at the property that our planning squad team member had it kind of introduced us to. Shout out to Trent, who's one of our star volunteers. Uh and we're out there in August, September, trying to figure out how are we gonna set up a ski area in like, a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no snow. And like we're pretty close to Rabbit Ears Pass, which gets uh, Buffalo Pass is near there. It has the most snow in the state, over 500 inches a year. And we felt like pretty confident that this area would get snow.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a choice between three different mountains on the ranch property and picked the one that was the most stunning. We scouted it in the summertime. Then we went up there as soon as there was a snow. And there was some terrain up there that was really fun and would work if it had enough snow. And we got pretty lucky that we got enough snow for that test season in 2020. And this is on Whiteley Peak. We then realized while we were operating that season that the mountain 4 miles to the north got twice as much snow. So we moved it from one mountain to the other from 2020 spring to 2020 and 2021 winter. Um, and that created a lot of challenges and opportunities, but like we had to go where the good snow was.
Right. So help us understand the larger parcel here. So this is a ranch. You lease land. It comes with some restrictions on what you can and can't do, and this relates a lot to infrastructure and I would imagine access. So set this up for us. What was your arrangement with these landowners, and how did that determine how you set up and ran Bluebird?
Yeah. So we basically leased the property. It's a cattle ranch in the summer. It's a guided hunting operation in the fall. There's no productive use of that land in the winter, really, except to like buzz around on snow machines. So, so they were excited about having some income in the winter, and we were excited to be able to operate on a mountain that you could drive to from Denver. And the way that we made this work was we had to navigate a conservation easement that was on the property. And that easement basically said, all right, like no buildings can be built here, and you cannot disturb the wildlife. And like, absolute, we're fully supportive of this, and we're very conservation minded ourselves. So this was not a problem from like a philosophical standpoint, but from an operational standpoint, it was a huge nightmare because it meant that we needed to take our our buildings, everything, and put them up every fall and take them down every spring. And this added an enormous operational cost and effort to to what we were doing.
So let's pause there because you have it established, right? And you open Bluebird, you do this test season, and yes, it's a hassle and a logistical thing, but you do get it set up. And I never skied there, but the pictures looked awesome. And when you have this collection of yurts and sprung structures and the fire pits and the sun's coming down, you have campers, it looks like almost like a music festival. It makes me think that yeah, that's the kind of place I could go backcountry skiing. Because for me, I broke my leg in bounds a few years ago, and I just was thinking if this happened in the backcountry, I'd probably die. But they were able to sled evac me down, and there's a fentanyl drip waiting for me at the bottom. In the backcountry, I don't even know if I'd have a cell signal. So the idea of Bluebird and the notion of it is great. You finally get a spot, you have it set up. What was it like on its best days when people are there, when the sun's out, when the snow is good? Just take us into Bluebird and what it was actually like to run it.
Not every day was like a music festival, man. Um, but I would say there was different kinds of best days, right? There was best days that were like that, where it's like, oh my God, like it's warm, everybody's running around in t-shirts, like, hitting the kicker that is right by the base area, and there's music going, and we're cooking s'mores over the fire and just having like a good jolly time. And yeah, people are in the parking lot like hanging out on the tailgates and then setting up to camp for the night. It was very, very fun and very social, and that was one of the things we were trying to change about backcountry skiing, because like it's inherently an antisocial sport, and that doesn't seem right. It doesn't have to be, and we proved that it can be this like incredibly social experience. So 1,000% what you're saying. And then there were also those days where there was not that many people, and you could have the whole mountain to yourself, and um and yet have all the amenities like you're saying and support mechanisms to be able to like feel like you weren't alone or out in the wilderness, and that it would be easy um to get help if you needed it. We had what we called the perch, which is about a mile up, kind of like into the beginner intermediate terrain zone. And it was a dome where we cooked bacon and gave it out for free. We had a grill going out there. From the perch, it was such an incredible vantage because we had slopes on almost every side where there was lessons going. So like you could imagine there's 4 AVI classes sprinkled about, and then there's like 8 more groups of lessons taking backcountry one tours around. And so you can see people skiing through the aspens over here, and people learning and having fun and just like kicking it at the perch. These were good times. I also like the third part of like the best days there was really that we were making it up. We got to do whatever we wanted, right? And so we had just some incredible events there. You know, some people have heard of this Boot Tan Fest, right? Hundreds of naked women like rented out the resort and would ski down and just kind of do whatever they wanted. I mean, how like if you're gonna start a ski area, start it like that.
Right.
but there's other smaller things, right? Like we had a guy who was really stoked on geology, and he would give us, we'd go skinning, and he would give like a geology tour, or we we would do like moonlight laps where they were organized, and you'd meet at dusk and then like go up and ski down by headlamp and then hang out around the bonfire. Like, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that Bluebird was magical.
How reliable was the snow once you moved to that second location? Was it good for the whole season, reliably?
Well, something that's different about Bluebird than what you've got at a traditional resort is that we didn't have any grooming, we didn't have any snowmaking, we didn't even have the runs cleared. I mean, like the open bowls had hundreds and hundreds of massive down trees in them, and there is no way to clear them easily and or with like the ability to operate within the conservation easement. So we had to rely on Mother Nature. And that was another huge operational challenge. And I mean, that's true for every ski area to a degree, but for us, it was make or break every season, and we just had to cross our fingers. So we realized we needed a minimum of 20 inches to begin operating, but like that was very borderline. Um, and the reality was that the snow was quite a bit better than on Whiteley Peak, but we are still getting 250-ish inches on average, which like it's nothing to laugh at. Like Mid Mountain Vale was getting about the same readings in a season as we were. So it's not like there wasn't enough snow. It just our opening dates were really challenging. And some of our best terrain was also south and east facing. And so like we needed enough volume to cover the down trees. We needed enough volume to make it safe and fun. And we were rolling the dice every year, or we weren't even rolling the dice, like Mother Nature is rolling the dice.
All right, Eric, we positioned this as an Ask Me Anything, so let me get into some reader questions here because they have some specifics about day-to-day operations. Carolyn McShay from Carbondale, Colorado asks, what kind of customer behavior didn't align with expectations? How did the actual market for a backcountry only ski area compare to what you expected?
Um, I assume you don't know this. Carolyn was actually on our planning squad.
Okay, well,
And
no, I didn't know that. I know you and Jeff, and that's it.
uh shout out to Carolyn. You're amazing. Thank you for writing in. And this is hilarious because she totally knows the answer to this question. Um, but I think what I'd say about like how the market compared to what we expected, that's a there's a million ways I could answer that, but I think that the most simple answer is that we didn't know what to expect. We were creating something that hadn't really existed in the form that we wanted to build. And therefore, we didn't know if anyone was going to show up. Right. And that's why we did these prototype weekends and test season was to like basically fail fast, learn as much as we could, try to imagine and invent the experience and figure out like what was really exciting and sticky about it. So we were on the sharp end the entire time. Like we didn't know. We could count cars that Berth passed and like make some guesses about market size, but we we didn't know if people would actually pay to go backcountry skiing in this kind of environment. So on a really macro scale, we didn't know. Um, and like the other thing I'd say about that is that it's 2025. We have a bit of recency bias, right? We see uphilling everywhere now. We see people in the backcountry a lot more now after COVID than when we were starting this thing. That was not the case. Uh, Backcountry skiing was wild and out there, and very few people were doing it. Um, Literally, the shift bindings were coming out as we were setting up our business, and like this was brand new for this to be a little more mainstream. So there was not a lot of data points for us to operate on. I mean, we looked early on that first year, we were talking with researchers at SIA. They're like, we don't know what to tell you. Like,
So who did show up? I know Jeff mentioned to me a lot of beginners. You just mentioned that as well. Did you get the experience, folks? Did you find that they had no interest in that organized experience like backcountry? Because it was backcountry. Who did you find actually showed up?
yeah, yeah. So honestly, if you asked us at the beginning, who do you think's going to show up? We would have said, I don't know, like 30 something bros who are skiing in bounds all the time and they're like hot stuff and they're bored because they've kind of skied everything out and they don't have a mentor or a friend who's into backcountry, but like they wish that they were getting rad
Mhm.
somewhere else. And that is absolutely not who came,
Okay.
right? Like we were absolutely flummoxed by what did transpire, which was that we were serving the folks who didn't want to get rad. We were serving the folks who were curious.
Mhm.
We were serving the folks who wanted a slower pace of skiing. We were serving the folks who were like early adopters and just wanted to see something different and new. We were serving what the industry calls lapsed skiers. For those who don't know what that term is, it's basically, hey, I skied for 20 years, 30 years, and then I fell out, right? And I fell out because, you know, I got bored or I got into something different or my legs won't take it anymore or whatever reason you can imagine, right? Like I'm just older and I don't want to do it. So this was amazing because it meant that we were giving people a new lease on their skiing life, right? We were truly bringing something new and different, and everybody who was there because they wanted to maybe try this, but in many ways they were running away from what the inbounds culture was. And we were really good at attracting and keeping the lap skiers. They loved this. It was different than a Nordic center. It was different than an inbounds downhill. It's different than cat skiing. It's just something an entirely different category.
I've never heard anything but positive reviews of the experience itself. What a lot of readers asked about, and that Jeff brought up and you've brought up, is the remoteness relative to the other ski areas, the established ski areas in Colorado, relative to the population centers on the Front Range. So Todd Wright from Wisconsin, for example, asks, while I love the location, I think it's being miles from any population center likely made it more financially difficult, that and having to put it up and take it down every year. Broad thoughts on location and how that ultimately handicapped you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was the location was incredible. It was beautiful. It was tucked away. It was a special place. You know, there was moose running around. Like it, it was so incredible, but it was really out there, right? And for somebody to travel 5 hours round trip from Denver to go for the day is quite an ask. And that was 60 to 70% of our guests were coming from the Front Range, whether it was Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs. Like people were traveling for the most part a really long way. And until the last season, we had nowhere for them to stay. And there's no amenities near there. And that's part of what made it really special and wild, but it created a lot of challenge, right? Either you're staying in Kremling, which is like an awesome little town, but it's limited and it's 40 minutes away.
Mhm.
Or you're staying in Steamboat that has tons of amenities, but it's also 40 minutes away and you've got Rabbit Ears Pass in the way. So it feels farther. And on a day where there's a storm or blowing snow, like you can't really get across that pass. So, so part of it was the amount of driving time and the fact that people had to drive by a bunch of other ski areas to get to us. And part of it was that once you're there, there's no way to survive. There wasn't, we sold a little bit of food, but you had to kind of go back to Kremling or over to Steamboat. And we did have this vibrant camping scene where, people in their rigs and whether it was back of a truck or a van or whatever kind of camper folks had, like we had a really robust camping scene, but it's pretty cold out there and you kind of need a pretty good setup to have that be enjoyable for a while.
So you're out there, and like you said, you have to drive by a lot of other ski areas. So a lot of people called out specific ski areas, and I think a lot of people are thinking this, well, why did they build it out there at Steamboat? And yes, you addressed how hard it is, but let's just talk about a few of these locations that folks are throwing around. Sam Rosecan from Denver asked about Berthoud Pass, Geneva Basin, Hidden Valley, abandoned Front Range ski areas. David Dean from Bellingham, Washington, formerly of Winter Park, asked, what about Jones Pass or a location with, quote, more challenging terrain and more snow? I'm sure that none of these names surprise you, and I'm sure that you looked at them all, but just broadly, why didn't those work out or wouldn't have worked? What are the restrictions there that kept you from building closer?
Yeah. So all of those that you mentioned are actually the same problem, essentially, which is
Okay.
they're on Forest Service land.
Yeah,
And I'm going to nerd out on permits for a second.
let's do it.
So the challenge that we faced was that there's a couple different kinds of permits that we could have pursued, and none of them really worked for us. One is your outfitter guide permit, which we got for that test season, but we needed to do this at volume. The whole idea of Bluebird was that not only could it kind of put a different lens on the downhill skiing, like the inbounds experience, but that could also invert the backcountry business model. Because right now, when you're going backcountry skiing, you have a variable cost, right? So, like, if I'm running a guide service, I can only take so many people per guide, right? It's usually four, five, 6 to 1. So, you're doing another avalanche class or you're taking another group out backcountry skiing, you're hiring another guide. The idea with Bluebird is that we could create a boundary. Within that boundary, we have ski patrol, and that ski patrol is not a variable cost. Ski patrol is a fixed cost. So we, as long as we get enough volume of skiers to be able to pay for ski patrol, we then have the ability to make a profit beyond that. And I bring that up because in this outfitter guide model, the permit is set up for outfitters that are and guys that are taking like hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And these, like for cat skiing operations that are inbounds, they're getting an outfitter guide permit, I believe, for the most part, to be able to run their cat operations and do their guided skiing, within their boundary or adjacent. And those permits are capped. Like you can't get a permit like that for tens of thousands of people. They don't issue them like that way. So that's kind of, that pathway didn't work. The other Forest Service permit that we looked into was a full-blown ski area permit. These full-blown ski area permits, which is like, more than half, I think, of the ski areas in the country operate on these Forest Service permits. Um, they're they're amazing. They offer 40-year leases to the ski areas because ski areas have to invest in so much infrastructure. And so, a ski area doesn't want to get a permit, build millions of dollars of infrastructure, and then be told, like, yeah, you can't operate here anymore. This is the only business that I know of that gets a 40-year permit like that. They're usually 10. And so that sounds great. Why, let's do it at Berthoud Pass or Jones Pass or Geneva Basin. Um, yeah, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
The last time they issued a ski area permit for a major ski area was around the time that I was born. It was Beaver Creek in the early 80s. They did do one in Montana, I think, in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But
Plateau.
yeah. But yeah, like it's very, very challenging, very expensive. You got to go through the NEPA process. It would have taken, we talked to the SE group about this. They were really helpful advisors early on for us. And the result was like, yeah, you guys can expect to spend 3 to 5 years and spend, 6 to 7 figures just to get an answer as to whether this is even possible. And by the way, no one in the Forest Service really knows how to issue these anymore. There may be other ways in to that, but when a ski area like the Geneva Basin example is actually important, same with Berthoud, those used to have ski area permit zoning.
Mhm.
And then when those ski areas closed, the zoning like magically disappears. The zoning doesn't stay.
Yeah.
And so there is no way to reactivate that. You have to kind of restart the whole process. And we didn't want to wait 3 to 5 years and we didn't have that money. So we wanted to move as fast as we could with what we could do and see where it would take us.
You get the site, you get the ranch, and you have this operation set up. There's a question from Gregory Scruggs, who is a reporter for the Seattle Times and some other outlets. And he visited Bluebird and had a great time there. I think he might have been on one of your fam tours. So he asks, so we'll talk about finances here. He asks, to my untrained eye, overhead looked so minimal. What did it actually cost to run Bluebird per season? If it was as cheap as I imagine, unless insurance nailed you or something, what was your financial runway and how did it run out? This is assuming you closed because of lack of dollars.
Yeah. Um, yeah, basically when we did our very first test and we bought our building and bought our rental fleet and operated at Whiteley Peak, um, like our test season in 2020, we got going with Kickstarter. We literally launched on Kickstarter and we supplemented that with like a friends and family round just to get enough money to be able to like get this thing started, to buy the building, to buy the rental fleet. Um, a lot of a lot of folks helped us get started. A lot of brands were really great to us early on, etc. Uh, After that, we got more, like when we knew we were going to operate a full season, we got more serious and we ended up raising a couple of seed rounds after that, um, as we were building momentum. But we didn't know. Like, it's like most startups, like it's not like we had a model to operate off of. We're not like a SaaS business. We were trying to build the plane as we're flying it kind of thing. And we didn't know exactly what everything was going to cost. We're also two guys who hadn't run a ski area before, right? So we did a really good job of pulling in advisors and getting people who did come from that world to supplement our out of the box thinking, right? Like our ski patrol was dialed and they had been doing this forever. Like we don't know how to do that. So we're going to hire the best ski patrollers. And I think that's indicative of like the bigger thing, which is like the model itself. The reason that Bluebird was different is that we went all in, right? We leased a mountain. We had a rental fleet of 100 to 150 backcountry skis and split boards. We had a high-end ski patrol to ensure that the experience is as high quality as it could be. We had a great guest services team, right? Like we did everything the right way, and that's the way that we wanted to do it. And the right way is expensive. And so we didn't know what the runway was going to be because we didn't know how much more we could raise. We didn't know how successful next month was going to be because we were building something new. But we sure felt like we were on a path to like getting it to be profitable and to um, building something that was going to be here to stay.
So you get the basics worked out and you want to do it the best. Did it come down to volume? Was it just it did the math just not work as far as number of people showing up versus what you can charge for this experience?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yeah, like obviously, um, the numbers didn't work, but that's exactly right. It's volume, right? Like we were doing roughly 10,000 skier visits per season, and we were open for 70, 80 days. So like, um, we thought that was pretty good. We were getting a lot of people to drive really far to go
Mhm.
have this experience.
Yeah.
And we were able to charge what we originally mapped out. Like literally, we did a survey at the very beginning, just saying like, "Hey, is this like an interesting idea?" And that's where we found our planning squad members was from that survey. And we did a pricing analysis called a Van Westendorp analysis, and that told us what people would pay, and it was right. It's pretty cool, but we yeah, we just weren't able to get enough people to a remote place and have them come back enough times to make the model work at that location. But I have every expectation that this can and does work if you put it closer to a population center of skiers.
I want to talk about that for sure. Let's focus. Let's finish the story of Bluebird first. You started in 2020, 21, or your first full season. In 2023, that summer, I get this email from Jeff, "Hey, we're shutting down." And I was surprised because the place seemed to have a lot of momentum. The pandemic seemed to spark interest in with its social distancing, with uphill and being away from lifts. I thought this was well positioned to be a different kind of ski area. And this is all just me watching from thousands of miles away. When did you begin to suspect, Erik, or when did you know that Bluebird was not going to work?
I mean, it felt like it was working.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't feel easy, right?
Oh.
Like running a ski area is not an easy business, but it sure felt like it was working between all the press mentions we got, the feedback we were getting from our guests, the organic traction and word of mouth, like the smiles when people are coming back from the end of their day. Like it felt like it was working for a long time. It's almost not a fair question because when I was in it, you're not able to see what you can see now in hindsight, right? But if I were to look back on that, I would say it's really two things. and they happened around the same time. One was more global, and that was the fact that we did this systematic search for private parcels across the West,
Mm-hmm.
and none of them were really panning out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's only so many places that have the terrain, the snow, the access, and population nearby. And there's literally like a couple dozen places that are really viable for this on private land in the entire like west half of the country. Um, and we actually hired someone to like while we were running Bluebird, there was another team member who was focused on land sales and acquiring the rights to do future properties. And we toured a lot of properties across the West. And we had to kind of do it while we were running the day to day operation because we needed to see it. We didn't want to do what we did, the mistake we made the first time, which was look at it and be like, yeah, we could probably make this work. Hopefully there's snow. And like, we had actually the open snow folks were really great about helping us um, identify which properties would be strong candidates for snow wise. But we really needed to see it in the winter, or at least in the spring after Bluebird season was over. And those properties, just for one reason or another, didn't pan out, right? Like usually these huge ranches that have mountains on them are owned by people who don't particularly want tens of thousands of skiers crawling all over their property. So when we realize, like there's a certain point, kind of fall 2021, where it's like, all right, there's a lot of dead ends here on building out the network.
Mm-hmm.
And around that same time, there was also kind of like a more local problem, which was our season pass numbers dipped from full season one to full season two. And like that, if I'm looking backwards, like that was probably like when I started getting nervous about business. But at the time, I was not nervous. I was just moving as fast as I could.
Right. What made you guys so sure that the network was the way to go rather than just going all in on Bluebird? And do you think that was the right decision? Do you think that ended up being a distraction ultimately?
Uh yeah, that's a great question. It definitely was a distraction to a degree, but we thought it was a distraction that was absolutely worth it, right? So it's like I would say in the first couple years, we we didn't want to create the model in one place and then have somebody else beat us to the market taking our idea. So it felt really important to try to get ahead of that because there are only so many places. Again, it's not SaaS. Like you can't just write code for a different thing. Like you the challenge of the business is the land itself. So if this is going to blow up, let's make sure we lock down the properties that are going to work. In the latter half, um, it yeah, it might have felt like a distraction because it wasn't panning out, but like it really became clear that Bear Mountain, where we were operating, had these challenges of being remote, and we weren't going to close Bear Mountain to open another location, probably, but another location that was closer to population would have allowed us to cash flow the thing, um, and kind of you know, create a new flagship, a new, better, bigger, more lucrative property. And who knows what would have happened with Bear Mountain.
Mhm.
But like, if we could get one that was humming, then we could maybe get like have the ability to open more without having to keep raising new rounds of money.
So you started this with some creative money raising, and you did Kickstarter and you did friends and family round, and eventually I'd imagine those things run out. So what happened when in 2023? Did you try to go to a bank? What steps did you take? Why weren't you able to get more financing to be able to extend this thing?
Yeah. Um, well, anybody who's got like a startup that needs capital knows this challenge, right? Like it's the same with insurance. Uh, a a bank doesn't want to loan you money for an idea that is like totally undeveloped, right? Like nobody else had really built this model. So a bank needs a business plan and um, they kind of want to understand the business before they'll loan you a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So it was not really possible to get debt financing. We did get some debt financing, but it was not through a bank in the end. But like we were really raising from people who are passionate angel investors and like who saw the opportunity that we saw and who saw our ambition to build a network of these and who really believed in the idea of Bluebird transforming the industry.
So there was echoes here of so I was up at Mount Bohemia in Michigan, and that's a really unique ski area. No snowmaking, no grooming, no beginners allowed, no beginner runs. And Lonnie Gleberman started this in 2000, and it's partially owned land, partially leased land. And he bought two chairlifts, but mostly it's yurts, and there's not a lot of overhead for a lift surge ski area. And he was talking to me about the early years, and he said, God, there were days when it'd be a Tuesday and we'd have one person on the lift and everybody wanted to shut down and said, no, we have to create a reliable product. And he told me that he was losing a lot of money for years and years and no one really believed in the idea. Now, I mean, the place is just bursting at the seams. He has to do a special season pass with no access on Saturdays because he doesn't sell lift tickets on Saturdays because it's so busy. The vibe when I go there is what I imagine Bluebird was kind of like, this place that people really want to be and they're willing to travel to have this different kind of experience. Could it have worked there if you would have had enough time and could have secured the financing? Or do you think ultimately it was just too remote? And, Bohemia is the best ski area in the Midwest, right? So you're not driving past better things to get there. Whereas Bluebird, you're driving past a dozen world-class resorts to get there. Different experience, but still, could it have worked with the money with enough timeline?
I think so. Yeah. I I don't when we went into it, we had no idea if it was going to work, but we believed in it.
Mhm.
And I still feel that way. I still believe Bear Mountain could have worked, right? Like we didn't have the capital ourselves to bankroll this thing and we needed to rely on others. But that, you can only do that so long. We have to prove out that this is going to work. And um, if we had had 10 years like Bohemia did, yeah, like we were building a lot of traction. We were also developing more amenities, right? We were realizing the challenges for why it was so tough for people to come for one day or for a weekend even. And we were getting creative um, with the conservation easement. Like we moved a building envelope within the property to be able to allow some yurts, basically like domes and yurts and really simple lodging. And like the first time we launched that was the last year we operated, and we didn't have the kinks worked out of that at all. Um, so yeah, I do believe that it could have worked. I don't think it would have ever like made a ton of money at Bear Mountain, but we could have made it work. And what we really needed though was that second location. We needed that second location that was going to kind of check all the boxes. And it's just, we didn't find the unicorn before we ran out of money.
You had good momentum in the media and the vibes were good. Had to shut down. I mean, I have to imagine that that sucked. How did that feel when you actually put out that press release, said we're doing it? And ultimately, how were you able to move on from that?
Therapy. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm still processing it now. It's like a very emotional thing. I actually really appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast and talk about it. I think that'll help me continue to process it. Ultimately, we were trying to make something incredible and unique and different, and we achieved that. And like, you open this with just 3 seasons, but for us, like, I feel like we achieved, we were able to pull this thing off for 3 seasons and give thousands of people like their best winter day, And um I I think part of it for me personally was that I when I started seeing some of the challenges in front of us, like I did step out of the business 1 year before we closed personally. And I came back to having a creative outlet, right? Like I had started my marketing agency when I was doing Bluebird. I was fully focused on Bluebird and I had back hired somebody to run my agency. But the fact that I decided to keep the agency while I was running Bluebird gave me a place to kind of bring my creative outlet, my desire to help innovative brands do big things in the space. Like I was able to parlay some of like the the value I was creating and the reward that I was building at Bluebird into working with other brands. And yeah, it took me about 2 years after exiting the business day to day to like feel like I was fully recovered and things were wrapped up. Um, yeah, and it's been really hard to talk about for a long time, and so I um I miss it,
Um,
and I miss it because we gave so many people like such an incredible experience.
when you think back on it now, I imagine when you first made the decision to shut down, that sort of dominated the narrative. But now you have the whole process to look back on from that energy of forming that group to search for it to opening it to having those great days there. So the end is just part of it now. When you look back now on Bluebird, what do you think of? What does that evoke for you?
I think about it probably every day in one way or another, and it's usually in snapshots, like a run I took or hanging out, or like some of the early days were really, really fun with the planning squad. And about half the time, it feels like it didn't even happen.
Right,
Like it feels like it was an alternate universe that I'm like getting little windows into once
right.
a um but I do what I would say is like I think it will reemerge. Somebody's going to make something like this work because it can and should exist.
Hmm.
And so I kind of like have hope that um maybe we weren't at the right time or at the right place, or maybe we just didn't have deep enough pockets or whatever, but that can inspire others to move forward with something similar because it was really special and it should exist.
I'm wondering as you've moved on and the calendars kept flipping, I wonder how much I want to read you something, and I'm wondering how much stuff like this lifts you up because you created something that I think meant a lot to a lot of people. I want to read this statement to you from Jacob in the Southwest Rockies, and we can walk off on this today. Jacob writes, I am curious as to why Bluebird failed, but I don't have a pressing question. I more so wanted to take a moment to express a genuine gratitude for the effort it took to make Bluebird happen. I got to go twice and it was incredible. As a husband and a father, I don't feel it is wise to ride in the backcountry alone. I don't have any buddies that are skilled enough to join me, so Bluebird was the only chance I had to try backcountry on my own. Yes, Silverton exists and I've ridden there too, but you don't get the uphill and skinning experience there. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to earn my turns. It was an incredible experience, and I will always be grateful to Bluebird for making that dream come true. Erik, what's your response to that when you hear that and you reflect on everything that happened? I mean, how does that make you feel about Bluebird and about yourself and about your life in this journey?
I'm welling up right now. Yeah, there's anytime you do something new or different, there's a lot of haters out there, and we had our share. But what kept us going was this. We heard this all the time.
Yeah.
We knew that we were impacting people and giving them something they couldn't get anywhere else. And we were transforming, yeah, like people's individual lives and hopefully transforming and making like something additive to the existing ski mix. And it's this, right? It's like the conversations I had around the fire after the day was over with guests that is the most meaningful and impactful thing. It's like we were there to share the backcountry and not gatekeep it.
Mhm.
And by doing so, it unlocked just like this incredible outpouring of kind of joy and love. And like that's what I miss.
Bluebird reminds me a little bit of, when Yellowstone catches on fire and the new stuff starts to grow up and they say this seed has probably been in the ground for 100 years and it was dropped, but it just takes a while. It needs the right conditions. I kind of think of Bluebird in hindsight as the seed. I think this is a really good idea. I think it will work somewhere, somehow, someday. I'm sorry that you weren't the one who made it into a permanent thing, but I think you made it into a permanent idea. And I think it was a really took a lot of vision, and I think you showed people a different way to do a ski area. So, from my point of view, I think that the story's not over. I don't know if you're going to be involved in the future. I hope you are because clearly you have the passion for it and had the vision for it. So, I just want to thank you so much, Erik, for laying that all out for us. I think this is going to be. I think a lot of folks are really, really interested in this one. So thank you very much. And I hope you get some good turns, however you do it, the rest of this winter.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. Now I can go skiing whenever I want.
That's pretty nice.
This was great, man. I thank you so much for making time and having me on the pod. And you're making amazing content. And keep doing what you're doing too.
That was Erik Lambert, co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry, Colorado. Awesome story, Erik. Awesome job. Thank you so much for sharing that journey with us. More episodes of the Storm Skiing Podcast dropping soon. You'll want to subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to get those the moment they are live. Also, please follow the Storm on X and Instagram at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I will talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.